Season 3 is here and Geno Atkins continues to be the top dog on the team. Look who moves up on the list though. Reggie Nelson. He was already on here, but he's still improving on the wrong side of 30, and at some point you hit a wall. This man is nowhere near it. AJ Green has been a stud the past 2 seasons, and he looks to continue it again this season. Michael Johnson continues to make the elite list with Geno Atkins in the middle and Hunt opposite of him. This defense could be scary. Leon Hall is another player over 30 that just seems to have found the fountain of youth. This defense has been carrying this team. Can the offense finally come together? I don't know what to think of Dalton. He did a really good job in the second half of the first season, then he does a really good job in the first half of the second season, then he just collapsed. We gave him that 4-year contract, but I think if he doesn't prove that he's the guy, I will not hesitate to put in Newkirk. I want Calhoun to sit this year and learn. I don't want to rush him too quickly. We don't need a David Carr, Tim Couch, or Joey Harrington situation here. He's young, we have time to develop him. At running back this season, the Nard Dog will start. Last year he split carries with Pierman, and this year he'll probably split carries with Nisa if he can't carry the load on his own. We also signed Anthony Allen to be a 3rd string running back. Otho Rich was moved over from halfback to fullback. He's a decent blocker, but more importantly, he's got nice soft hands. AJ's our number 1 guy, everyone knows it. Michael Jenkins, fantastic job as a solid number 2 for the team last year, and with the addition of Eric Michaels, this offense might actually go through more than just Green and Jenkins. So Eifert really hasn't wowed me, but last season was his first as a starter, and hopefully this season he improves. Andrew Whitworth continues to be the left tackle for the team for the 3rd straight season in this franchise. Shannon Edens has improved a lot over the previous season and is looking like a stud at left guard. To be fair, he has a veteran next to him to learn from. Starnes was injured last season. He will miss the first 5 games of the year due to an injury, which means Anthony Collins will continue to play at center, and when he returns, most likely Starnes will be the backup. Zeitler will be the right guard for another season, but I'm getting ready to move on from him if he doesn't improve. Leroy Harris is his backup that was signed post free agency. Andre Smith returns at right tackle, and this line is looking pretty decent with the exception of right guard. On the defensive side, Marcus Hunt is a starter. He is injured, but he will be ready to go for most of the season. Johnson will be the starter opposite of Hunt, with the Abreu backing him up. Geno Atkins, stud, we already know that. Gellers, his buddy, in the middle, and I expect this line to be dominant all season long. These are some big boys and they gonna feast. Aaron Maven continues to start, but he hasn't really progressed as much as I wanted him to since being the starter, and I might have to look to replace him. Ray Maualuga has become such a solid player for us at middle linebacker. I wasn't expecting that considering the outside linebackers haven't really improved. We let Burfict go, who was actually really stellar for us, but his asking price was a little too much, so Larry English will be a solid gap player for the time being. If there's any position on this team that we've strived at so far, it's cornerback. Hal, Harris, and Jones will lead the pack, and hopefully Kirkpatrick takes over Jones' position next year. Reggie Nelson is 32. I don't know how many years he has left, but we need to make sure he retires as a Bengal, and hopefully with a ring. Sean Williams is the starting strong safety, and boy was I glad I gave him that starting job back in season 1. He just keeps getting better and better. Mike Nugent returns as the kicker. Huber the punter. No trades this year, I know, shocking. But we get a primetime season end home opener against the Baltimore Ravens. This was possibly the worst game I've ever seen us play so far. Dalton had 76 yards and an interception, and that's not a first quarter stat, that's the entire game. The Nard Dog wasn't very nardy either. We have a 2nd straight home game against the Oakland Raiders, the team we lost the Breeze sweepstakes to. Another poor showing by Dalton. He's starting to prove to me that he may not be the guy, but what is going on with this defense right now? It's terrible. Week 3, a third straight home game, and the Cincinnati fans just want this to end. Take them somewhere else, please. They take on the Steelers, and we're not looking good. Based on their rankings, I don't even think they're even looking. It took an extra quarter, but the Bengals got their first win on the year. Dalton was actually doing well before an injury forced him out, and Newkirk finished the game. And for the next 4 weeks, this is his team. They now face the Baltimore Ravens. They lost badly the first time, but this time Dalton isn't starting. Will it go differently? It was a much lower scoring game and possibly closer than the Ravens wanted it to be, but Newkirk did enough to keep them in the game. But this team is just better than them at the moment, but the gap did close. 1-3 isn't where I thought we'd be, but we're now taking on the 1-4 Chiefs, and hopefully we can get back on track. Is Newkirk the guy? He led an 18-point fourth quarter to get the Bengals their second win on the year, and I think we're getting back on track. Unfortunately, this already struggling defense is going to struggle some more, with Michael Johnson out for 5 weeks. Another win will get us to 500 for the first time this year, and of course they take on Washington, who's undefeated. Well, it looks like it was very close, but Newkirk proved he's not the guy. He's decent, but he's not a starter. We need Dalton back, and thankfully he returns next week. There's optimism in the air. Andy Dalton is back, baby, and maybe he's got his groove with them too against the Buffalo Bills. Dalton might have gotten his groove back, but it was short-lived as he's back on the injury list for another 4 weeks. I've seen enough out of Newkirk, and I feel like the season's over. We're 2-5. The Parker Calhoun era begins next week. To finish off the first half of the year, the Bengals take on the Philadelphia Eagles, and this could be a nice game to ease Calhoun into the NFL. It was not an easy game. The defense fell off the deep end, and with Johnson there or not, they're not good. Calhoun didn't even have a terrible game. It wasn't good, but it didn't explain why they gave up so many points. Larry Ridley decided to rub it in our face, turn it around as soon as possible. No shit! Week 10, we take on the Cleveland Browns. We were swept last season and we're absolute dog water right now. This seems like a fun matchup. The Nard Dog went off in this game, and Parker Calhoun wasn't that bad either. The season may be over, but maybe the future is looking brighter. The team may still rank in the bottom of the league, but they take on the 1-8 Giants team. We can at least pick up our confidence this game. We got a lot of cap space, which is good because we have a big name to re-sign. Reggie Nelson is pretty old, but I think he has a few elite years left in him. I offered him a 2-year deal, which he accepted. And Leon Hall was also in need of a contract, but he's old and I don't know if I want to commit a $10 million a year to him, so I'll hold off on that. There's nothing like giving up 24 points in the fourth quarter to build up the confidence of your rookie quarterback. Calhoun, again, didn't play badly. This defense has just been abysmal this year. We're sitting at 3-7 on the year, taking on the Indianapolis Colts, a worse defense than us. Is that even possible? This is either going to be a shootout or the worst game ever. It was a shootout with Calhoun having the best game so far this season. A 21-point comeback in the fourth quarter got us the win, but this defense continues to give up points. A few weeks earlier, we had our first matchup against the Browns, giving Calhoun his first ever win in the NFL. The Nard Dog didn't go off like he did the last time they played, but this defense did a good enough job keeping them from scoring, winning by 1 point. Wait a minute, we're 5-7 now. If we win this game, we'll be 1 game away from 500. That hasn't happened since week 7 when we were 2-3. And this Chargers team does not seem good. Drake Kirkpatrick was in need of a contract. He's our 4th best corner, and I like the dude, and I gave him an offer. He accepted. Turns out the Chargers are who we thought they were. Parker Calhoun went off again, throwing for over 300 yards. The defense only allowed 1 touchdown. Are we good again? Remember when we finished 5-3 in season 1 and had hope? We now take on a good Steelers team. Last time we beat them, but that was in our house. I don't have high hopes. What is going on right now? We're 7-7. We hit 500 for the first time this year. We were 2-5. We're now 2nd in the division. Calhoun went off again. I'm afraid to say we found our guy. Look at what happened to Dalton. Look at what happened to Newkirk. We only have 2 games left, but it wouldn't be a Bengals season if our starting left tackle and halfback got injured. It's fine. Everything will be fine. We now take on the best team in the NFL, the Denver Broncos. Bear us strength. Before we get obliterated, I did re-sign Devon Stills. He's a nice depth player for the defensive tackle position, and I also gave Whitworth a 1-year offer. Very cheap. He is injured right now, but who knows? This team's playing well. Maybe next year will be good for the entire season. Who am I kidding? Guys, Calhoun just won a shootout against Peyton frickin' Manning. We are above 500 for the first time since the final week of last season. Based on this standing going into the final week, the Raiders and the Bengals would currently have the wild card spots. We win, and we're in. Last year, we had to beat the Colts, who weren't great to get into the playoffs. This year, we need to beat the Cowboys, and they're not great either. Can we do it? The Bengals just had a statement game today. They beat up the Cowboys to finish the year 9-7, our first winning season in the series. We didn't make the playoffs? We were robbed! Somehow the Texans leapfrogged over us! With that disappointing ending to that season, let's head to the offseason. Peyton Manning, MVP again. Don't worry, he retired after this season. Greg Schiano is the coach of the year, and Frazier and Fox, the previous 2 winners, were behind them. Look who came so close to getting Defensive Player of the Year. Ray Maualuga has been so good with the team since I started this franchise. He just missed out the award to, yes, Ellerby. I thought with Burfict gone that our linebacker core would be bad, but Maualuga had his best season in the series so far without him. Burfict's replacement, Larry English, performed well. I didn't think he was going to be bad, but I didn't think he was going to be this solid either. Parker Calhoun only started 9 games this season. Even without a full season, he finished 2nd on the Offensive Rookie of the Year. He went 7-2 and our season completely turned around. He was also the 10th best quarterback in the conference. I really hope he's the future. His quarterback rating doesn't look great, but I think that's just how the game works, especially in the West Coast, when the completion percentage and the yards per attempt can be low and affect it. We've seen what we've had in everyone else. Newkirk showed glimpses, but he was too hot and cold. And Dalton, well, he's made of glass. Eric Michaels also edged his way into the top 10 rookies. He was drafted to be the eventual replacement of Michael Jenkins, and I think he did a phenomenal job his rookie season. AJ Green was the 2nd best receiver, again, losing to Wes Welker, but it's okay, he retired too, it's okay. The Broncos in shambles right now. The Bengals rocked them so hard, they both retired. AJ Green continues to be a beast on this team, and considering how well Wes Welker played until retirement, I have a feeling Green is going to wreak havoc for another 10 years. He also made the Pro Bowl once again, and well deserved too. We did get a solid season out of Jenkins. Such a great signing, but with Michaels playing well, the writing is on the wall and he'll be replaced next season. Eifert had a pretty decent season. It gives me hope this offense can be explosive next season. Geno Atkins is back on the best defensive line again. This time he's 4th on the list. He's back with double-digit sacks, returning to his Season 1 form. I think he was actually better this season. He's also the only player who's made the Pro Bowl in each season of this franchise. Unfortunately, this team struggled to have a pass rush. Atkins had the most sacks, Gellers was right behind him with 6, so that interior was really good, but Johnson was out for 5 games and Hunt was okay, while English also generated 5 sacks. Leon Hall was the third best cornerback. To be quite honest, this was his best season with the team. Contract year, and he proved that we need him more than he needs us. He also made the Pro Bowl this season. Reggie Nelson was also really good this year. He's the 8th best defensive back. This was one of his best seasons with the team, and he's been pretty consistent since the start of the series. I really want to get him a ring before he retires. He also made the Pro Bowl this season. Chris Harris wasn't on the list for best defensive back, but he was able to snatch 3 interceptions. And I think on paper, this secondary is the best in the NFL. Just need to get to the quarterback better. Before we move on to the offseason, Oath the Rich somehow made the Pro Bowl. Don't ask me how, because I just don't know. The offseason is here, and we don't need to re-sign any staff members. I did decide to renovate the stadium. I renovated the team store, and I also renovated the bathrooms. You're welcome, fans. I also decided to change the scheme from West Coast, which suited Dalton more, to a zone run scheme that should help our more mobile passer Calhoun become much more of a threat. Now we have our players that we need to re-sign. Allen was signed before the season, but I don't plan on bringing him back next season. Gilberry is already on the wrong side of 30, and he isn't going to improve much, so we didn't bring him back. Charles is the backup tight end. He's still very young, and he wasn't really asking much to be brought back for a 1-year deal. He'll be returning. Sanu was injured during Season 2 and missed most of Season 3 with the torn PCL. I did want to bring him back as depth. Since Jones won't be returning back either, I offered a cheap 2-year deal, but he chose to reject the offer and won't be returning next year. I chose not to bring back Cook during the season. He's old, and I'm sure we can find a solid replacement through free agency. Harris was another pickup before the season began. I did want to bring him back, and I offered him a cheap 1-year deal, but he also chose not to return to the team next season. I also chose to let Zeitler go during the season, since I just feel like he was asking too much for a player that really wasn't worth it. Andre Smith is a 3-time starter on the team, and I would love to bring him back, but I also thought he was asking too much for a player that's just okay. He won't be returning next season. Jones is the 3rd best corner on the team, and he's getting up there in age, but I offered him a 1-year deal to bring him back, and he accepted it. It was a cheap offer too, so I think it was worth it even if he is regressing. Ever since I switched Geathers to defensive tackle, he's been just wanting more money, and I don't doubt he's worth it, but I figure at his age and with the drafting of Miyake last season, I'll take my chances and move on from him. The final player to resign, Leon Hall. He had his best season last year, and he proved he's still got plenty left in the tank, and I didn't want to give him a $10 million a year offer, but we have the cap space, and we're trying to make a playoff push next season, so I gave him what he wanted. Free agency is up next, and we have work to do this offseason. We need a running back, and Jamal Charles is looking for a new home. He fits our new zone scheme offense we plan on running. I gave him an offer. We also have a clear hole at right guard with Zeitler and Cook gone. I offered Watford a contract. He's 26 years old, and he also fits our zone scheme. Plus, he's way cheaper than what Zeitler had wanted mid-season. Dennis Kelly was another lineman I gave an offer to, with Smith being too rich for my blood, and he's very popular this offseason. I wanted a cheaper alternative, and I think Kelly does just that. I was able to sign all 3 players to the team. Charles was by far the most expensive, pretty much $10 million a year, and hopefully he's worth it. Now we go to the draft. We have the 20th pick. First player we chose, outside linebacker Trayvon Nur. Was not the best choice, but we needed help at outside linebacker. We still need help at outside linebacker. In the 2nd round, we selected offensive lineman Devani Hollier. We'll be battling Watford for that right guard position. I think we've done a solid job drafting linemen in this series. In the 3rd round, we decided to go cornerback Christoph Walton. Will be sitting 5th on the depth chart, but with Jones getting older, he's insurance if injuries were to happen. In the 4th round, we went with another outside linebacker. If there's one thing I've learned, don't draft linebackers. In the 5th round, we went defensive end. We let Gilberry go, and Reeves will take over his position on the team as the backup. In the 6th round, we went fullback. Renee Alberry will be starting over Otha Rich. He fits the blocking fullback better. In the final round, we selected linebacker. Yeah, linebackers are definitely harder to draft. Before we go to the next season, we changed Sean Porter from outside linebacker to defensive end, and we'll see how that worked out in the next video. Season 4 is coming up, and let's see if this team can take the next step.